The night I almost lost everything didn't begin with a mistake. It began with silence, a lake too still, and a truth I wasn't ready to carry. I remember the way the water reflected the fatting sky, like it was holding secrets deeper than I could understand, and how sitting beside my boss's wife felt like standing on the edge of something I couldn't step back from. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us what truly matters, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Ripple of Kindness. Your support keeps these stories alive. I had never planned to be there that evening. My boss, Daniel, had asked me to drive his wife, Alina, to their lake house because he was stuck in a last-minute business crisis. It wasn't unusual for me to help out. I had been working under him for years, and he trusted me more than most. But something about that drive felt different from the start. Maybe it was the quiet tension in the car, or the way Alina stared out the window like she was trying to escape something she couldn't name. The lake house stood alone, surrounded by tall trees that whispered in the wind. It was beautiful in a haunting way, like a place meant for reflection or confrontation. When we arrived, the sun was already dipping below the horizon, painting everything in soft shades of blue and gray. Alina stepped out slowly, her red dress catching the last light, and for a moment she looked less like someone's wife and more like someone carrying a story too heavy to tell. Inside, the silence grew louder. Daniel had called to say he wouldn't make it until the next morning. That left just the two of us in a house filled with memories that weren't mine. I tried to keep things professional, keeping my distance, focusing on small tasks, checking the generator, organizing the kitchen, anything to avoid the weight of being alone with her. But some silences demand to be broken. As the night deepened, the air turned colder, and the lake outside became a dark mirror. Alina eventually sat across from me, her posture composed but her eyes restless. There was something fragile behind her calm, something that made me realize this night wasn't about temptation, it was about truth. She wasn't looking at me the way people expect in stories like this. She was looking at me like someone who needed to be seen. And that's when the real challenge began. I had spent years building a life based on loyalty. Daniel wasn't just my boss. He was the man who gave me a chance when I had nothing. I owed him everything, my career, my stability, even my sense of worth. But sitting there, watching his wife struggle with something she clearly couldn't carry alone, I felt torn in a way I had never experienced before. Not because of desire, but because of responsibility to him, to her, and to the kind of person I wanted to be. The hours passed slowly, each moment thick with unspoken emotion. Alina eventually began to open up, not in words but in the way her composure cracked. It became clear that her life, from the outside so perfect, was filled with loneliness. Daniel was always working, always chasing something bigger, leaving her behind in a life that looked beautiful but felt empty. And I realized something that changed everything. This night wasn't testing my loyalty, it was testing my character. It would have been easy to cross a line, to let the loneliness of that moment blur judgment. But real strength doesn't come from giving in, it comes from choosing what's right when no one is watching. I saw not a woman to desire but a person in pain, and instead of stepping closer, I held the line that mattered most. We sat there, two people in a quiet house, sharing nothing but understanding. The kind of understanding that doesn't need words, the kind that heals without breaking anything else. By the time the first light of morning touched the lake, something had shifted, not between us, but within me. I had faced a moment that could have destroyed everything I believed in, and I had walked through it without losing myself. When Daniel arrived later that day, nothing seemed different on the surface, but inside, everything had changed. I saw him not just as a boss, but as a man who needed to see what he was missing. And I saw Alina not as someone trapped, but as someone who deserved to be heard. In the weeks that followed, I made a quiet decision. I stepped away from the job that had defined me for so long, not out of guilt, but out of growth. Some chapters in life don't end with drama, they end with clarity. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to protect what matters most. That night at the lake didn't ruin lives, it saved them. It reminded me that integrity isn't tested in easy moments but in the ones that could break you. And when you choose the right path, even when it's harder, you don't just protect others, you become someone you can finally respect. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the choices that define who we are, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And before this story ends, I have a special request for you. Comment the word strength if you believe doing the right thing matters, even when no one is watching. Because in the end, it's not the moments that tempt us that define us. It's the ones where we choose to rise above them.